Welcome to Stay Sparked. On this show, we explore how to stay inspired in the modern world through the most profound lessons from Burning Man, relationships, entrepreneurship, psychedelics, spirituality, travel, and more. On today's episode of Stay Sparked, we talk about community. What is community to all of us? What are our personal experiences and perspectives and sparks around how to build community?
We talked about what makes community work and what do we do when there are threats to our community.
Yes, and the type of communities that we have access to, whether that's online or in person, and how do we find those? How do we create those? And how do we maintain those? Enjoy the episode.
Welcome to Stay Sparked. We are three friends here to share conversations aimed to inspire and light you up. Thank you so much for listening. If you've been enjoying our shows, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Tell your friends, spread the word. I am Halcyon.
And I'm Betsy.
And I am JANUS.
I am the host of the Hug Nation YouTube channel and another podcast called Hard on the 80s that reviews cringeworthy 80s films.
And I am a holistic healing practitioner in Southern California and the founder of the Power Affirmation Project that teaches life skills for sustainable happiness.
And I am the founder and CEO of NuWorld Nutritionals, a nutritional supplement company with mushroom-based products engineered to improve your state of mind.
And we love starting these gatherings and these conversations with a little bit of gratitude sharing. Betsy, what are you feeling grateful for today?
I'm going to share my gratitude for my blood sister. She is 13 months older than me and she lives in Ohio. And this last weekend, she came to visit and we got some really deep quality time together and we've been adventuring together. And I'm just really, really grateful to be able to have quality time with my sister.
Nice. I'm feeling pretty grateful today for some downtime that I was able to take advantage of this weekend. Normally, between my partner and I, our weekends are pretty packed socially or just other stuff that needs to be done. And this was a rare weekend that we had nothing on the agenda. So things opened themselves up and we took advantage of it by doing very, very little. So it was nice to have downtime. I'm grateful for the relaxation.
Nice. A reference to our self-care episode of Stay Sparked. My gratitude this week is for a holotropic breathwork seminar workshop that I went to this weekend that was so much more than I expected. I wish I had it before we recorded our alternative healing episode because, man, it was one of the most healing experiences I've had in my life. I did reparenting of my inner child and just cried and laughed and wow, it was I'm just grateful for these new modalities and new avenues of growth and healing that I just keep popping up in my life. So just so grateful for the road ahead. And
it's amazing.
Yeah. And it was it was one of the things that was so wonderful about it is they really built this container that kind of had this almost instant community feeling where we had this trust that we could go through it together with the other participants. And that is what today we're going to be talking about community. Our topic today is communities, making community, being in community, the value of community, and how community plays a role in our life and in our growth as we become the people that we can be in the world. So I'm curious if you, Betsy, do you feel yourself as a member of a community or communities at this point in your life?
Yes, it is a part of my absolute life. Like it makes my life so much better. I feel so grateful to have actually connection to multiple communities, different circles of friends and circles of just like-minded people. I like to kind of consider community is like the symbol of the flower of life. If you've seen the flower of life, it's many different circles overlapping each other. And there's these moments where the circles overlap and then there's this touch point and it makes this beautiful symbol. And I feel like that we're all moving on this beautiful sacred geometry pattern. And I know for me personally, it has been part of my journey of connecting with many different circles. And it fills me, it fuels me, it inspires me. I look back on my life and I feel like I have gotten the I've had the privilege of getting to tap in and connect with many different circles.
I love that. I think that, like, as I was thinking about this topic, I was really thinking about all the different circles of community that I'm a part of, and that some are within others, some are overlapping, and it really, I mean, it can go everything from, like, I was thinking, do I feel like I'm in a global community? Yes. Do I feel like I am in a community within my household or family? Yes. And there's so many in between, and they each have different types of ways that they serve us. How about you, Janus? Are there any communities that you feel strongly a part of?
Yes, at the moment, the community I feel very connected to right now is commonly known as a circle of friends. But the difference being, I feel like we all have those friends that it's fun to drop in with, but there's never much like connection beyond, let's say, social. What and if you were to call this friend, or they were to call you and need something, like need some assistance, need some help, it'd be like, why are you calling me for this? That is kind of falls under the realm of like circle of friends, whereas a community, I feel, are your friends, and they're people who, as Betsy was saying, kind of we can lift each other up, or we can hold each other up, or I can show up for them if they need assistance in some ways, and they can show up for me in those same ways. And that, to me, is a definition of community. The whole concept of like, it takes a village to raise a child, but it takes a village to do a lot of things. And I think being in a group that allows you or provides you access to a support system, and people and friends who are there for you for various in ways and means, that to me is the definition of community. And I do feel like I've got a pretty good community, pretty widespread community that I consider my friends and loved ones. So that's what qualifies as community for me in this moment.
I love that. There's a difference between, acquaintances and people that are kind of like just in the periphery. And then there's people in our lives that like will go through the hard times, right? When I'm hearing you speak about it, I'm really considering so many people out there, like many of you listening probably. I just love you all so much. And we've been through so much together, just reflecting on the journey of growth and life, right? These wonderful rites of passages like weddings and births and wonderful things that happen, and deaths as well, and hard times and challenges, and raising money for people that are in need, and coming together to celebrate each other, and really like cultivating these deep bonds that that even in the hardest times that you're going to be held, in those moments of feeling like, I'm really going through something, I can actually know who to call. I can really lean into my community, and I know that my community can lean into me. And I feel like it does take some time to get to that point of depth and of support, which I'm really grateful for Burning Man, because here we are, right? We're all burners. This is our common thread. And it has really taught me a lot about what it means to be in community. I mean, it's so interesting, the world that we live in, there's so many boxes that we all live separately, right? These houses next to each other, we barely know our neighbors. But then at Burning Man, here we are living in this sort of tribal way where we're getting to work together. We're getting to share things together. We're getting to remember what it's like to have these kinds of cohesive communities. It's just been such a beautiful opportunity to take that 1 week out of the year, just get a glimpse of what it is to share and to be in community, and then take that energy and then weave it into life and into the ways that we operate.
Yeah. I think Burning Man is definitely the model that has taught me so much about community. And I think about it a lot. Like, what is it about these people that I feel like I'm in community with them? Because if you picked, 100 random burners from the event and put them in a room, and it would be hard for me to figure out, like, what do we all have in common, except that we have all agreed to these 10 principles, among which are radical inclusion and radical self-expression. And so what I think, in addition to we show up for each other, which I think is one of the things you guys have been talking about, this is what a community is. is a place where you can be supported, and which is different than a gathering of like shared interests. If I'm on a Facebook group, that's not necessarily a community. If I like post and say, oh my gosh, I just had a diagnosis, I need support. Like, I don't think that Facebook group, well, actually, I take that back. It depends. That's what would be the difference between a community and a group of people with shared interests. But at Burning Man, the shared belief that if you are being who you authentically are, that is enough and that is celebrated. I think that is so huge. And it is something that I think, there was a time when I think people had religious communities and congregations where you were kind of saying, you are okay, you're supported, we have shared interest, and so we celebrate each other. I think there's a lot of people in this new world that we struggle. Like, where do I go to find people who I'm like and that say I'm okay? And I think it's so significant to have a group of people around you that support you and say you're okay, that it is therapeutic. I had a friend that said they're talking to someone who is seeking out therapy, and they're like, well, you might need therapy or you might just need community. I think that there is something about being supported. And that's the thing, is, as I used to say, Burning Man, Burning Man, Burning Man, Burning Man. And I'm like, wait, no, it's any group of people that says, yes, you're okay, you're enough. Whether it's the Juggalos, or I met a guy this weekend who is a fish fan, and he's like, and as we're talking, I'm like, yeah, you can go and hang out with another fish fan and you can skip 95% of what's needed to build trust with someone. You have all this shared in common. That you, like, based on this shared stuff, I love you, I support you, you're okay. And that allows us to release and become, I think, just to blossom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's that piece you're speaking to is the shared experience, at the risk of this becoming a Burning Man centric episode. That's something that I feel, and I've been aware of in my own life, is that's why it works so well at Burning Man, is because it's not just an easy thing to get there. Like, by the time you have arrived, you have gone through either a minor or a major crucible just to get there. Forget what happens forget what transpires once you arrive, but just getting there is a thing. And so when you see somebody out there, you have a sense of what they went through to get there, or you at least know that they went through something to get there. And there's that shared, like you're speaking to, Halcyon, that shared experience of being like, well, okay, you like fish? I like fish. Oh, we can leapfrog past all that. And just the fact that I'm seeing somebody out on the playa with me, it's like, wow, yes, you're already, I like you. You're already my friend. So I think that shared experience is something that is integral to fostering a sense of community.
And also, what you just touched on, with the shared adversity, is also something that can make a huge difference too. When you know that someone, you've shared a foxhole together, you've gone through a crazy dust storm together, or you've made a journey to the playa. But also, there's something like, if you're a Juggalo and that you've had to deal with the same judgment from the world, that ties people together. I even heard someone say that the reason why missionaries, why the Church of Latter-day Saints is instructed to go door to door, is not so much to get new members, but to create a sense of adversity that makes the community tighter, because there's us, and then there's all the people that are being mean to us as we go door to door. And there is something about that us, them, that sometimes can fuel the sense of community. I mean, that's kind of a negative way, but even in an inclusive way, like that, we have a shared adversity. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I love that so much. And also, Burning Man, even though there's a lot of community and there's all these little sub pockets of community, I feel like it can be very isolating too. I know I personally have been out on the playa and felt really alone, looking around and seeing all these people, and like, it feels like everybody knows each other. And then it's like, wait, where's my people? I don't know where I fit in. And so I feel like this deep core need for us as humans to belong and to be a part of something, and also watching the mindset around not feeling like a part of something, or not belonging, or us versus them. I feel like Burning Man has really given a training to be able to witness those thoughts, right? Because it it does come down to how we see ourselves. That's what I feel. There's been moments where if I'm like, oh, I'm not part of that group, or I'm not invited, or I'm not included, or whatever, that just perpetuates, right? But if I can actually come to a place within myself and know that I love who I am, I love, you know, exactly where I'm at, and that's okay, and I can take the initiative to move towards something, towards someone, right? Finding a camp, for example, or finding, some people like church, or some people want to go into a surf club, or to take those initiatives to participate really helps to clear and eradicate those limiting beliefs around not belonging, which is like our primal nature, right? It's like in the caveman days, if we weren't part of a tribe, then that means death, likely. If we get ostracized from the tribe, then we have to go out into the wild and fend for ourselves. And so it feels like there is still that kind of deep-seated fear in our genes, right? If we're not a part of something, or we don't belong, then it's like, oh God, right? And so I like to consider that often. It's like, oh wow, no, okay, this is not then. I am a part of something. I do belong, even if I'm not invited to something. That happens too. So I think that there's a lot of different layers of our DNA and our genes that have to do with community and the importance of that. And especially now, and I mentioned this before too, around like how do we become a part of something if we're not, right? How many people do we know out there, or not know, that are just living on their own, don't have any friends? There's so many houses out there. I drive through some of these tract homes and look at like all these houses, like how many of these people know each other? It'd be so wonderful if there was communities in these sort of homes. I think we're moving towards that, more community living and people sharing land and sharing resources. Love seeing more and more models of that emerging. But I feel like, yeah, we're in a really unique time.
Yeah, it's and there's a question as to whether you're looking to say create a community, and there's a whole saying, if build it and they will come. So there's a lot of times where I have found myself looking for a community, or looking for my tribe, feeling like I was a member of something, and then all of a sudden kind of realizing or feeling like, wow, I'm not really a member of that thing I thought I was. I was like, oh, whether it's like you're not getting invited anymore to stuff, or it just wasn't what you thought it was. So the advice I give into, or the recommendation I give into others who find themselves in that situation is something that I've given, given it to myself. It's like, well, if you're not being invited to something, then it's time for you to start hosting. And if you're finding that you're not, if you're lacking community, we can make an effort to like build that. And so the question then becomes, okay, so yeah, how do we do that? And one lesson that I learned from the Burning Man days was, in 2006, a couple of friends and I formed a camp that turned out to be pretty big, and the RLD days, and
Oh,
there
yes.
was
Red light district.
yeah, and there was a question as to like, who do we invite? Because we want to have the cool kids there, and then I was like, no, we invite everybody. We're all the cool kids. Everybody gets to be the cool kid this year, and we're gonna have the awesome camp. And it was a fantastic camp with turned out to be like 120 people, and a lot of people were there and part of this camp who would not have found themselves in the same group of people, but it turned out to be amazing. It was just so diverse, and so like, and what the Halcyon was speaking to, like authentic. Everybody was coming with their authentic selves, and that was like honored and respected, if only for the week. But it really felt like a strong sense of community. Like we were all there for each other for that entire time, and that was a lesson for me. Like, no, everybody can provide something. Everybody can offer something, even if it's not expected, or we're not expecting much from that person. So yeah, inclusivity,
Yes.
kind of, being very over welcoming perhaps is a good approach.
So awesome. Yes, and you know what sparks for me in hearing that is just around building community. Right. How do you build community? What do you do if you aren't a part of a community? How do you build that? And so my spark is that diary with Halcyon because you have led a Burning Man camp for many years, Pink Heart. You also have built an online community of hundreds of people coming together to share in gratitude, and you do these love mornings, and you just really are a beacon of community. And from over here, it looks really easy for you. I'm sure there's a lot that goes into it, but yeah, I'd love to hear from you, Halcyon, around what your journey has been around building community.
I will
Yeah.
say that that does not look easy from where I'm sitting. It is clear that there is a lot of work going into what Halcyon is
Maybe
building.
we'll
So
shift from easy to graceful. You seem very
graceful. There you
graceful.
go.
You're
There
very
you go.
graceful. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's interesting when I look back, like most of my adult life has been around building community in one way or another. My early job in the internet in 90, well, actually, so when I had a personal site called cockybastard.com, and I put a chat room on it, and very quickly people just started hanging out in the chat room that was on my site. And for me, it was people that were attracted to the values and the ideas that I was sharing. So people started and then people who had things in common based on me being a beacon for it. That was the very first thing in like 97, 98. People started, and there was this, I used to wear a tea cozy hat. So there was this tea cozy crew that became really close friends, much closer than I was to any of them, but I was kind of the focal point of that community. And then I moved in and I got recruited to work on a early college community website called collegeclub.com, and where I was like, if you've ever were on MySpace, there was you were Tom's friend first. Halcyon 1 was your first friend when you joined that community. So I had millions of college friends, and my job was the community lead. And really, so over time, then I started building my own communities. CitizenX.com was a webcam community that I started, and then smaller communities and more intimate communities. And I think that for me, it has always been about being as authentic and role modeling the behavior and that should be expected, and then celebrating people that are doing that, and trying to establish a container where it is safe to be authentically yourself. And that is enough. I think people are so hungry for a place to be celebrated, and that just establishing that is all you need to do here is be yourself, which is, that's the Burning Man lesson. So I've tried to take that idea and bring it into whatever communities that I create, because if you've never had that experience of being of someone clapping when you make a funny song, instead of people rolling their eyes at you, it changes your entire life. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm allowed to let this stuff out. I think that people talk about Burning Man as a permission engine, which I love that idea. Most of our lives, until we get real community, we are trying to do what we're supposed to do. And as you said, Betsy, that we need community. So if we feel alone, we have to try to fit the mold of what we think we should be, so that we can be accepted in a community, so that we can feel safe. But that can be a trap too, because then you have to play the role that you're needed. So in building community, if the requirement is not you have to be XYZ, but the requirement is let your true self out, and we will celebrate the beauty of your authenticity. For me, that's the magic sauce. And then people, without anything else except that permission, blossom, and they go, this community has done so much for me. It didn't do anything. It just established a safe place for you to be you. And then we all get to reap the benefit of that. I mean, that's to me, that's the core of how community helps us to grow. And then we also get to train ourselves to witness the true beauty of the world is in seeing fellow human beings express themselves authentically.
Mm. Yeah.
Yes.
And that's that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah,
I think what
I would say that
Yeah.
that being said, and then there's other parts of it too, is that because I'm super into radical inclusion, but I'm also believe that you need to protect the family. And so that means that if there is behavior that makes people uncomfortable, especially if it makes it so that people feel like they need to hold back in their expressions. And that is a common thing that happens is, in sexual dynamics, there's someone who feels someone who is a little overly friendly. And it makes this, my experience has been is generally a man is a little bit overly friendly, and women start to feel like, oh, I need to kind of not give off the wrong signs that I want to be touched in that way. It's like, no. We need to coach this person to not make people feel that way, or we need to remove them. And so that has been like one of the hardest things about community leading for me is having to tell someone, you are no longer welcome here. And they say, what about radical inclusion? I go, I have to protect the family. I have to make up a safe space for people to feel like they can be themselves. And you have disrupted that.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for speaking to that, because I was actually feeling into that as well, as like the radical inclusion piece and like celebrating people for who they are, not necessarily for bad behavior, right? But what I have noticed is that when there is a higher percentage of people showing up in the best way that they can, it really inspires other people that want to come into that space to show up in the best way that they can too, right? So some of the communities that I'm a part of and that we're a part of, we hang out together with many different groups of friends, and there is this mutual celebratory energy. And then when a new person comes, there is this like upliftment, right? And there is this like, oh wow, all these people are really kind. I want to be kind, right? Wow, so many of these people are very generous. I want to be generous. That feels so good, right? And also, of course, there is a tendency for some people that have, had trauma or have gone through challenging things or just are still learning how to be kind. The assholes, to put it nicely. But, this is a part of the world that we live in. There are people out there that do bad things, and so love that you spoke to how to hold that safe space as a community leader to protect and to be aware and teach, right? And not to shun or ostracize, but to actually like call someone forward. I actually had that experience that you're speaking to. There was a guy that he was doing some inappropriate things, and there was multiple women at this gathering that he was just making feel uncomfortable, and he made me feel uncomfortable. And it was really hard at first to be like, oh God, do I say something? How do I? And so I ended up communicating with a couple of people that were at the gathering, and we called forward a conversation with him. And we like actually sat down with him and said, hey, brother, I see you, and some of the things that you're doing are actually not okay. And it was so challenging for him. He was so uncomfortable in his body. But then after about an hour or so, like he was like thanking us and like apologizing. He ended up like a couple weeks later, he sent us gifts as an apology, like the 3 women that he made feel uncomfortable. He was like, thank you so much. Let me make it up to you. I know what I did was like, inappropriate. My life has changed because of the fact that you called me out, right? Like how many people might just go into a gathering and make someone feel uncomfortable and no one says anything? Right? That's not how we grow. That's not how we learn. It just perpetuates, right? So I think that is such a beautiful thing to just stay in that space of really calling everyone forward and into their highest and best behavior and way of interacting. And that's what builds community, right? Then we can keep growing and evolving together.
And yeah, and that's an interesting delineation in the definition of community. Realizing realizing that, okay, so what are we about here? There's a lot of community, and there's no wrong approach to this, but there's a lot of communities that might have an experience like that where they're just like, all right, no, we're not here for that. So, and the person gets bounced. I've been in communities or gatherings where I've witnessed this as well. And that's not necessarily wrong. It's just one approach. The approach you're talking about, Betsy, to really call somebody forward and be like, hey, this is what's going on. Here's how we feel about it. And, it's a form of nonviolent communication where it's okay, here's what we're seeing. Here's how it makes us feel. Here's what we're asking for. Can you give this to us? And, the answer is yes or no. And, when the answer is yes, and there's evolution and there's growth, that could be and I understand this can be a challenge because sometimes you just want the issue or the problem or the person just go away. But that calling forward of a person or a group of people to elevate themselves and to evolve along with the group, that is what fosters a sense of community. That was what kind of knits things a little bit tighter. So whenever possible, I think that is the approach, to be like, no, we need to actually communicate this as opposed to just flat out ostracizing, which sometimes has to be done. But if you can call somebody in and be like, hey, let's work this out, I feel the results, what you get out of that approach is far greater than, one of those things that's greater than the sum of its parts, so to speak.
Yeah, I'll admit that there are times when I have put that kind of energy into things, and there are times when I've said, "You're gone." That I don't have the bandwidth to dedicate to the problem. I need to dedicate the energy to the family. And when I look back on my life, that the times that I have like the biggest uncertainty or maybe even regret is in those moments when I had to kick someone out, and it's like, there's never been a time when I've kicked someone out and I felt like I was happy that happened. I mean, it was all there's, I have to have faith that the person, that everything happens for a reason, and their growth needed to get, smacked upside the head in that way to maybe look at their behavior differently and try to leave people with a little bit of information, even if they can't digest it at the time. Because, as you said, like, is the answer yes or no? When I've said, hey, you're making people feel this way, if the answer is, oh my gosh, I don't want to make people feel that way, what can I do to change? Cool. Well, then let's continue and find a way for you to return to this community. If the answer is, I didn't do that, they're doing this, and it's like, yeah, this isn't going to work.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with having a community that is trying to operate at a certain level. There are certainly groups where the collective has like gotten themselves at a certain level, like even prior to becoming part of this community, and they're just like, no, it's like you need to have your social skills or whatever skills or mindset, you need to be at a certain level just to kind of get to this community or just to be in this community. And there's nothing wrong with like being like, wow, okay, so we have to have just to kind of sticking with the theme, it's like, wow, we have to have the consent conversation with you. And no, we're not doing that. You kind of needed to have worked this out before you arrived here, so you can go work it out somewhere over there. Best of luck with that, and we're moving on. So that is an equally valid approach.
Yeah, and as you're talking, I remembered an example where there was someone that I had to tell them, look, here are the ways that you didn't show up in the way that we expected of you, and so you're not welcome to camp with us next year. But this isn't a lifetime ban. If you want to talk in a year or two and discuss, how you can contribute in a better way. And he did return a few years later, and he would meet with me during the year and tell me the things, his awarenesses of what he had done, that he recognized the way he didn't show up, and show me how he was a different person, and has returned as a really beneficial and contributing member of the community.
I think that this is a really, it's so awesome how it applies to Burning Man. And one of the things that I'm actually feeling inspired to kind of tune into is this sort of, what I'm hearing is, there's a leader of a camp, for example, right? But when you're living in community, for example, when you have a group of people, say 5 people living together, or maybe you have multiple families sharing a land together, there's not a hierarchical structure. typically, right? And so it's like, how do you actually bring some of these principles into living together? That's one of the things I've been in deep contemplation with and practice of over the years, because in Southern California, it's much more efficient. I know for me as an individual to be living with other people, it's quite expensive. And so we can get more for our money when we would live together. And, there's something that really, it takes a lot to be able to find harmony within living together, whether that's finding ways to communicate. Because what we're talking about here, right, is communication, right? And we had our Stay Sparked episode around the art of communication. There's so many layers that are needed in order to be able to harmonize with one another. Right. And I feel like I've been also in contemplation around what's the difference between living in community versus having roommates. Right, because having a roommate is basically we're kind of just like sharing a kitchen, and we're sharing a household, but we don't really hang out much, right? And community, living in community, is when we want to share meals together, and we want to share resources together, and we want to uplift each other. And one of the things you spoke to so beautifully, Halcyon, is around like, how do we fan each other's flames? How do we uplift each other? How do we like celebrate somebody else's song instead of rolling our eyes? That is such an important part of being together and feeling comfortable to be who we are. Right. And so I feel like there's more and more people that I'm seeing, and I'm holding a vision of being able to have these really amazing opportunities to take that Burning Man sense of community and tribal living into our day to day. Right, we have Emerald Village that is here in Southern California. It's 5 families that have shared land for over a decade. I see more and more people that are building communities, sharing land. There's even some other great podcasts out there. We'll put in the show notes that Rebecca Goodman started from her experience of living in community. There's so many beautiful resources these days of learning how to live differently and get out of these cookie cutter box homes and come together to share and to live in this way. And it takes something. It really does take something. And so I'm really excited to keep learning about it.
Yeah, I think that's a really beautiful topic, and a good idea to refer to the other people who are really living it. Because I love that you point out the difference between living with people and living in community. And I think it's exciting that you can be living with people and you can transfer that to living in community. And there are the ways that I know that do that is shared purpose. Even if the purpose is we want to support, members of this household support each other in our goals of professional and personal growth, that's a shared mission, and then you can, as actions happen within the community, is that furthering our purpose or is that detracting from our purpose? And then things like shared activities. And the other thing that when I've been living in communities, you have to have agreements, so that if you, especially if you don't have someone who is the king of the land, you need to have some outside documentation that says this is the agreements we make. This is how we problem solve. This is how we deal with disagreements, because disagreements are going to happen. I mean, even if you both are the same level of cleanliness, a community where there's dishes in the sink is quickly a war zone.
Yeah.
It's so true. Yeah, having shared values, right? If we don't know what our values are, then it can be really challenging, right? And in the previous house that I lived in, there was 4 adults and a toddler, and we actually created a mission statement, which was amazing. It took us some time to clarify what that is, but we would come together and we would tune into the ways in which that we want to cohabitate and share visions. And we created this really beautiful mission statement that we printed out, we put it on the fridge, and every time we would have a house meeting, or sometimes when we would share a meal, we would share it. And it felt so good to keep coming home to that, like that mantra, right? And I've also lived in opposite situations, right, where there is no cohesive agreements. It's very hierarchical and it feels disorganized. There's a very different feeling from that, having that, like, the systems, right? If there's systems in place, there can be organization. If there's no systems in place, then things can get very messy. And it's the same thing with communication and dynamics, and it's really nice. I love getting to take some of the things I've learned from living in community to progress forward and implement these different practices.
And I want to give you credit, Betsy, because you also brought that into this show. As we were talking about what we wanted to do, you were very clear about, like, let's fine tune and make sure that we are here for a mission. We're here to spread sparks. We're here to uplift. We're here to share the tools and ideas to enhance people's lives and growth. And I think that has guided us in what we do, so that this, among the three of us and among everyone who is listening, it is we're building community. We're building a sense of shared vision and support. And if it comes to it, we got each other's back.
Yeah. And I feel that can be a challenge to create community without it resulting in a hierarchical situation, like what Betsy was speaking about. Even if, like, one or two of those community members, let's say they own the property and it's their place, you can still foster some community with the other people who are living there by doing what you're saying. Like, okay, let's get together and let's craft our community guidelines together. Let's craft a mission statement together, as opposed to other situations that just have a hierarchical kind of, layout,
right.
or
this is how it is, and
this is how it is.
And
So I've experienced a community where it's a situation where somebody who lives in the community owns the property, owns the houses. We pay rent to them, and, oh, by the way, here are the community guidelines that you need to agree to. And it's just like, oh, okay, that doesn't necessarily feel like community. It just feels like a list of rules that I need to adhere to. And it's being called community, doesn't feel like community. And and aside from, one sure way to foster community is like they're doing up in Emerald Village, where there's shared equity in the property. There's shared equity in what is going on here. So not only is it a shared, mutually, created community guidelines, but also I'm invested in many ways in this property. So when you have a bunch of people who have done that definitely helps foster that sense of, shared goals and shared outlook, which that can be done anywhere, like, whether it's, these online groups on Twitch or Discord or various other ways. Like, you can create, an online group, or whatever group you're creating. If you can do the shared, like, community mission, community outlook, like, this is what we're looking to do together, and have it be a collaboration, as opposed to just presenting a list to people, that this thing I've created, here's this community, quote unquote, that I've created, and here's a list everybody must sign. It's like, no, it's like, bring everybody together, see what they think about it, and create it from there. That's definitely goes a long way in fostering a sense of community.
I think
multiple ways.
Yeah,
For
I think
sure, multiple ways of
especially if
doing
you're
things.
beginning, I think that yeah, you don't want to impose the rules upon people, but often people will then move in and they have to accept the rules. They need to know, I'm moving into this situation and this is the agreements that have already been put in place.
Sure.
Yeah, talking about online communities, I just wanted to share a beautiful experience I had with communities. So when the pandemic started, I started hosting gratitude circles in Zoom, and I just kind of set a container didn't invite specific people in, just said, this container exists. It's about sharing gratitude, 30 minutes twice a day. That's it. And then people just started coming and having very diverse backgrounds all over the world, very different life situations, but the shared vision, the shared purpose was in supporting each other in our gratitude and supporting each other in life, really, but using gratitude as the kind of medium of how we communicate and how we express and how we guide our focus. And sometimes people question, how close can you get to people that you meet in Zoom? But when the war in Ukraine started kicking in, we had a member that fled her home towards the Polish border, and another member in France, in Paris, drove 10 hours to pick up another member in our community in Germany, then drove 10 more hours to the Polish border to pick up Anna and her 2 children and their dog. and we
Mhm.
did a GoFundMe together. We found her a place to live, and so these digital connections that we have are very much possible to have very real community that makes real powerful differences in the world. And that we didn't, when I started doing the circles, I wasn't like, I want to build a community that will be there in case there's tragedy. I was like, no, let's just have a place where we can allow ourselves to be authentic and blossom and be good to each other. And what happened? People blossomed to the point where like, I want to be good, and then an opportunity to be good showed up, and they acted. And that's, I think, the beauty of communities. You don't like, let's come together just in case there's a disaster. No, we learn to love and support and care about each other, and then it just feels good if we can be there for each other.
Yes, that's amazing. Wow, how beautiful. And what I'm hearing too is these pillars, right? You created these pillars, which is gratitude, love, community, right? And then the community filled in that space, and it's just so beautiful what can happen when you create that container. And you're right, like there's so much that can happen beyond the screen, right? I've had that same experience right at the beginning of the pandemic. I had launched the Power Affirmation Journal and the virtual group to go along with this journal, and we were getting together. There was a group of 8 of us that created this really beautiful 8 weeks of journeying together and journaling and meditating and breathing, sharing gratitude, right? And then it kept going multiple times. We did 8 weeks, and then we did 12 weeks, and then we would have different iterations of some people were doing it multiple times. And there's deep bonds that have occurred, right? And then once the pandemic started to lighten up, and then we could get together, then we come together, and we had this one group dinner. I'll never forget it, where it was all the people that have gone through the virtual group, this community of Power Affirmation virtual group of graduates. And there was this cohesive conversation that just bonded us together, like all different backgrounds, different types of people. But we came together and it was like, wow, okay, gratitude, affirmations, meditation, breathing, these really beautiful things that we all have in common that help to bond us. And like now I'm seeing even just like deepening of friendships as they came together online, and now they get to see each other regularly. And I'm sure many of you out there listening have had that experience where you connected with somebody virtually for some time, and then you meet in person, and it's like, oh my God, I love you so much. It's been so great to get to meet you, right? It's like this such a really beautiful time that we live in, where we can cultivate community beyond our limitations of distance. It's so incredible.
I think one of the things that whether it's a virtual or physical or household, or I mean any community, for it really to be successful, there needs to be vulnerability, a safe container and vulnerability, and you need to let people in, and then then you can connect through the cracks. I mean, if you are seeking community and you want to show up to a meeting and expect to be I mean, a good community will open their arms and give you a space to surrender and let your guard down. But you can't just sign up for a class and say, cool, I've just joined a community. That you have to also be willing to risk. You need to, and you shouldn't do it though until you feel safe. But if you find a place that you feel safe, you gotta risk. And when you do let people into your soft underbelly, that's when you find those connections that give you this juice, the sweet thing that we're talking about. You build it through trust. You build it through shared experiences, through shared adversity, through kind of a history of going, okay, I can let this person see me, and they still are applauding and smiling. So I'm going to give them more. I'm going to give them more and give them more until you're together.
Yeah, and that and there's a time factor involved in that. I think one thing that makes I guess us 3 are in a pretty solid community, and the thing that makes that so solid is because we've been doing this for 15 plus years, 16 plus years, getting close to 20 years. And there was talk, my partner and I were talking about moving away from the Southern California area And I had I have a couple friends who were like, well, you can, we were lamenting that we would be losing community. And our friends were like, well, no, you can create community anywhere. This is true. And what's also true is that there is a type of quality you only get from time, spending time together and being in that space. Like you can just drop in so deeply with people, and you can hold people. You can just really go to some. There's just a higher quality that you get with a certain amount of time that passes. So yeah, we decided, my partner and I were like, yeah, we're maybe not going to be so quick to just give that up or move on from that, and really like kind of root down a little bit more into and enjoy like the community that we've already built and have invested time and energy and effort into, and it's valuable, worth holding on to.
Whew.
That's amazing. I love that. And I actually kind of tend to disagree because I used to have that mindset because I lived in California, Southern California. I've cultivated our community for so many years, and there's a deep history. And I was like, how could I ever move away from here? I can't, you know? And then I had an opportunity to go spend some time in Asheville, North Carolina, and I instantly met people there and dropped in super deep. I lived there for 9 months, and by the time I left, I feel like I have family, soul family that was created in a very short amount of time. And then I came back to Southern California, and my soul family was still here, and it was like, the deep history and the deep rooted bonds. What I compare the difference to is like, it's like the community that I experience here is like a garden that has been tended to for many years. There's deep roots, right, that are integrated. And in the community that I experience in this other space is like new seedlings, and it's just a different type of feeling, right? I definitely value so much the rich history, and like I was speaking to before, these rites of passage that we've all gone through, and seeing each other go through these different changes in life. And also going out into the world and to connect with other communities is a really beautiful thing. And I feel like one of the main things I've learned about how to do that is something you were speaking to, Halcyon, is around acceptance, right? When we accept other people and celebrate each other and participate as well, right? Can't just like move somewhere and then just hope to find community. You got to put yourself out there and go and connect and be kind to others and share your light and, get to weave right into other communities and connect in deeper ways. So I feel like moving to Nashville last year really helped me pop the bubble of that idea that like I could never move, right? And now I get to do both. Right. I can be there part-time. I can be here part-time. There's other places around the world, right? There's so many pockets of amazing communities that we can plug into.
I love that weave into communities. I was going to ask you, like, any tips? You just nailed it. If you have to weave into communities. Yeah, that's beautiful. I've got a spark that I want to close with. I think that community is one of the ways that we can find purpose in life. Sometimes we seek out, like, what am I supposed to do with my life? How can I make a difference? Well, if you find people that you can support, if you can be a cheerleader to other people, if you can lift people up, celebrate people who are showing the courage to be who they truly are, you're helping build community, you're helping people grow. And so just being less focused on what do I need to do and more focused on how can I be supportive to the people around me is you become a precious part of a community, which then gives you purpose. And without doing anything else, you are leading a life of purpose. And which is why, I said earlier that, do you need therapy or do you need community? Probably both, but community can get you a really far in your sense of purpose and sense of peace and in the connections that make life so beautiful.
Yeah, and to piggyback on that, in regards to kind of what's kind of sparking for me as we wrap up here is the saying that if before you seek a therapist, just make first make sure that you're not just surrounded by a bunch of assholes. So it's
I love it.
and that, so it might be, when you kind of realize that's one way to realize the value of community, and be like, okay, so if I'm not feeling supported, maybe that's what's lacking. If I'm not feeling supported in life, maybe that's what's lacking in my life is that sense of community. Where do I find that? And to Halcyon's point, when you look at what you can offer, like really self-reflecting, what do I have to offer? What am I looking for, and what do I have to offer? And going with both those ideas out into the world. And the reason I feel that community in Asheville worked out for you, Betsy, is because that was your approach. You weren't necessarily looking to, okay, well, I'm going to go to this place and see what I can get. Or see what it has to offer. You come with an offering, and anytime somebody comes to us with an offering, we're pretty open to that. We're pretty welcome to that. It's like, oh, you got something for me? Oh, you're looking to provide value to my life. You're looking to expand my experience.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. Let's talk. And when we go into a certain scenario situation with that same energy, we're going to be welcomed pretty strongly. So that's the key. Like, come looking to be of service, come looking to offer, and you're going to be welcomed in most parts of the world, frankly.
Yes, absolutely. And that goes right back to also the Stay Sparked episode around communication, right? Listening, right? When we show that we care about other people, and we genuinely do, I'm here to learn from you, and I want to know about you, and I am here to be in service and bring a contribution, then that just creates this really beautiful, like, upward spiral of connection. Yeah. And I think that my closing spark is really about the pillars of value systems, right? If we're clear about what's important to us as an individual, and moving into community is something that's important to us, to be really clear about what are my values in community? What do I want, right? If I want to have people in my life that all focus on the upliftment of humanity, or sacred activism, or community living, or connecting to the earth, or simply kindness, right? To clarify what are those value systems that I hold within myself, then that can really help to attract and also magnetize who we spend our time with, right? It's like a tuning fork, right? If I'm not clear about what I want and who I am, then I'm just going to attract all kinds of random things. But if I'm really clear, I hit that tuning fork, and it's like vibrates at a certain frequency, and we resonate, and then find our tribe, right? So often I hear in our communities and in the Burning Man culture, it's like, oh, I found my tribe. I finally found my family. And it's like, well, how does that happen? Right. And I believe it is really about getting clear about who we are and what it is that we care about.
Mm-hmm.
It can be a tough journey, because you need to be authentic to find your people, and you need people to help you get authentic. But
Yep, totally. That's where you could try on different things. That's why Burning Man's amazing. You keep trying on this camp. I'm gonna try on this hard rock camp. I'm gonna try on this spiritual camp. I'm gonna try on the pink heart camp. Right.
Yeah. And the saying that if you want to go fast, go solo. If you want to go far, go together. Mm-hmm. And so we're social creatures. We need people. That's actually one of the essential things that we need is food, clothing, shelter, human contact. That is essential, and we kind of lose it. So we need people in our lives, and sometimes that's tricky and that's challenging. It's worth it. So we are happier around other people.
And on that note, just want to let all of you out there know we're so grateful for all the feedback that you've been sending to us and giving to us. And this episode was actually sparked by one of our listeners who sent us a message and said that he's been really enjoying it. And he actually asked us to talk about community. And so if you have any sparks out there that you'd like to instigate, we're super open at this stage to receive some sparks from you all.
Was that Thomas?
That was Thomas.
Thank you, Thomas.
Yeah, thanks, Thomas. So anybody listening, if you've got an idea for us to converse about, we'd love to hear it. Please feel free to share.
And before we finish up, go ahead.
I was just going to actually ask how people can find you in the world, Halcyon.
Oh, well, gosh, thank you. Um, if you go to my johnstin.com, JOHNSTYN, there are links to a bunch of my communities that I run. So you can join me in the gratitude circle that I do twice a day and pop in and get a little taste of instant community. You are radically included, and just a little dose of community. You'd be surprised how much it can just feel to just be some shared pillars of gratitude and kindness and connection can do. I also do a morning broadcast that is the same, linked in the same place. And I think I'm gearing up to doing another group coaching group, which is a more intensive community building that I do over a period of weeks. So if you're interested in that, you can also, through the same means, the same site, reach out to me, and I will keep you in the know as that community starts to be created.
Amazing. Beautiful. And how about you, Janus? How can people find you in the world?
I am out there in the world via my nutritional supplement company, which is called NuWorld Nutritionals. It's NuWorld Nutritionals, and our main product is a microdose product that is geared towards improving people's state of mind, dealing with symptoms like depression, anxiety, ADHD, PTSD, things like that, improving and alleviating symptoms of dementia, anything neurological. It's really proving fantastic and getting a lot of results, a lot of quality results for a lot of people. So yeah, you can look up the website, newworldnutritionals.com, and use the code SPARKED for 10% off of any of our products.
Excellent.
Amazing. And you guys can find me out in the world sharing my inspiration and my sparks with the Power Affirmation Project, which is started with a journal that helps to reprogram limiting beliefs and has evolved into a virtual program. And now I'm building the virtual class and course. So you can find that poweraffirmation.com. I also love working with people one-on-one, in person, doing body work and healing work, intuitive coaching, and also virtually doing Dharma coaching to help people to get their life on track with really building habits that promote sustainable happiness, reprogramming of belief systems, embodiment practices. And also one of the things I love getting to share with the world is affirmations. And so you can find some of my Power Affirmations audio recordings on Insight Timer and on my YouTube channel. So all those links are in the show notes. And on that note, we can close it out with an affirmation.
Beautiful.
Yes. Okay. So I'm going to share an affirmation in the form of a question today, because there is actually a lot of power that comes from asking questions, right? Without necessarily needing to answer it right away. There's actually a research study that shows the power of using a question versus an affirmation, and there's very similar results. And so the question that we can be with today, if you like, you're welcome to close your eyes. You're welcome to put your hand on your heart if that feels good for you. And the question is, how may I be in the highest and best service today, sharing my gifts with the world in a way that is impactful, is joyful, that is prosperous? How may I show up in service today, sharing my gifts with the world in a way that is impactful, joyful, prosperous, fun? How may I show up today in the highest and best service to sharing my gifts with the world in a way that is fun, that is prosperous, that is impactful, that is joyful? One more time, just staying curious. How can I show up today in the highest and best way in service to sharing my gifts with the world in a way that is fun, that is joyful, that is prosperous, that is impactful? So it is.
And so it is.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Betsy. Thank you, Halcyon.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
Stay sparked.
Stay sparked, people.
Yeah, that worked out great. I just put it on mute anytime he was sawing. And
I didn't.
I never heard it.
Yeah.
That was great. Well
Never
done.
noticed, never
Great.
heard it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing, because every time I was talking, he stopped.
Well done.
You are in the zone.
Yeah, amazing.
Nice. Betsy's going to have a fantastic day.
I know. Magic
In the flow.
is everywhere.
In the flow.